The collaboration with THAYER began by a visit that was just to get to know people. And then we had the idea to run a short workshop for students to build musical instruments that then I get to experiment with and play with as a composer. And the students came up with some pretty wonderful, wild ideas. That really inspired me to take that to the next level with writing the music.
This is a variation on the musical saw, which is normally just kind of a freestanding piece of metal that you'd hold between your legs, bend differently, and then bow at the same time. Originally, I wanted to have like a whole array of these that you would tune differently and then play with mallets. But then talking to Molly, she was really interested in the kind of vibrato noises that you could get.
So I got a harmonic there, so it still sounds like it's still vibrating, resonating, but it's just a different note.
We were really focusing on the materials themselves, and what does this material want to do? What is its true nature? How can we help it do that thing?
Like this? Yeah. Because it's kind of, it's the
And
matrix.
this is in tune.
One of these is brass and one of them is bronze?
Yeah.
This is brass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we could.
Yeah.
As a composer, I go off in my room, I think big thoughts, and I put things together in a very abstract way. But then it comes down to real life. It comes down to a physical space and a performance and people seeing something real. And that felt very much like the trajectory of engineering. The same kind of process, this kind of end goal of making it a real thing in the world that people could interact with.
It's just like violin bow rosin, so it's kind of sticky and tacky and allows friction to happen a lot easier. It sounds very similar. We have an instrument called a crotale, which is like a little disc that's pretty thick, and you strike it and it has a very clear tone like this. And you can bow those with a violin bow or a bass bow, and it sounds similar.
Exploring sounds in raw materials and then figuring out ways to frame those things and put them together.
So I decided to try to find some kind of material that had an interesting and unique sound on its own that hadn't really been captured that much yet in the percussion world, which is honestly not that easy to find because there's so many percussion instruments. But I was just kind of walking around exploring a lot of different materials, and I found these really thin sheets of aluminum, which have a really cool kind of eerie, almost trashy and, I guess a cool way. I think of like a China cymbal, but I guess a really cool, really thin China cymbal that resonates for a lot longer.
Given that we were given certain limitations, it was interesting to see, how far we could take our ideas. Came up with, I'm still deciding for a name for it, but it's basically a guitar and a gallon. I like the aspect of the gallon's like void, that sort of like that deepness that it has. And so here you have like tuners for your guitar. And so you adjust the strings as you need, and you have the strings going through the center, which gives you the maximum sound. It took a while to construct, and constant revision, constant alterations, but it worked out,
I think engineers and composers have something in common in that we both try to think of things that don't yet exist and make them exist. It's this application, this physicalization of theoretical ideas that felt so much like composing to me.
This is basically similar to a wind chime, but each pipe has a different note, and depending on where you hold the pipe, can actually change all the way to like a different octave.
Copper, gold, tin, bronze, steel. Copper, gold, tin, bronze, steel. Copper, gold, tin, bronze, steel, aluminum, brass. Copper, gold, tin, bronze, steel, carbon, fiber, nylon.
Having to write for all these instruments that I had never written for before, it was just a great challenge. Challenges always bring creativity, I think, in my experience.
Carbon, fiber, nylon.
There are two professors who've really been very close companions with me on this journey. One is Ulrika Vext and the other is Vicky May. They're both faculty at THAYER. I wanted to really spend as much time as I could exploring THAYER and the work that gets done here, and they've just been wonderful.
Copper, gold, tin, bronze, steel, aluminum, brass, cast iron, titanium,
Ulrika gave a presentation at the beginning of the workshop on materials in musical instruments, which was really wonderful and something I kept coming back to as I was working on the text for the piece. So the only text that's used is the names of different materials that are commonly used for musical instruments.
carbon, fiber, nylon. Carbon, fiber, nylon. Chrome, tungsten, silver, zinc. Carbon, fiber, nylon. Chrome, tungsten, silver, zinc. Rosewood. Carbon, fiber, nylon. Chrome, tungsten, silver, zinc. Copper, gold, tin, bronze, steel. Carbon, fiber, nylon.
I was very moved by the piece because I think it's the very first on materials. I've never heard a composition that was truly dedicated about the materials that are used in the making of the music, so it was really moving.
We focus a lot with our students on creativity and innovation. That's a big theme here at THAYER. So really just getting students to find different things and see what they can make out of them, and thinking outside the box and trying something and failing and trying again. And you know, the more things you try, the more likely you are to succeed.
I thought the piece was wonderful. I love the way the contemporary instruments, the instruments the students designed, and the classical sounds came together. I love the mix between the vocals and the instrumentation in the background. And to me, it was just a perfect indication of a collaboration between the arts and engineering.
Copper, gold, tin, bronze, steel. Copper, gold, tin, bronze, steel. Aluminum, brass. Copper, gold, tin, bronze, steel. Carbon, fiber, nylon. Copper, gold, tin, bronze, steel. Aluminum, brass. Carbon, fiber.